Hey there, fellow artists. Welcome back, or welcome if you're new around here. So today, my fellow artists, we're going to have a little bit of fun. We're going to play a bit of a game. Think of it as like trivia. We're gonna do a bit of like a color mixing trivia, okay? And there is a reason for this. There is a reason for this because as artists, or at least I believe as artists, it's really important for us to know and understand color theory. Have you ever heard that word before? I know some of us are a little bit, we get kind of scared of the word theory, but color theory is actually really important for us to understand as artists so that we can not only mix our own paint colors and achieve the result of color we want based on any other set of colors like out of paint tubes and stuff, but also so that we can get the colors that we want and the highlights and the lowlights that we want on the page or the canvas, whatever you're painting on, right? And if you're like, what is she talking about? What is happening? Check out my free color theory workshop video. It's a full video class type setting. And I also give you a free workbook to print off, download, do whatever you need to do with so that you can follow along with the class and start to kind of grasp and understand just the basics of color theory, right? But here today, I kind of want to test your knowledge of what you may have learned in that class, or if you're already an artist and you already know, or at least you think you know, a little bit about color theory and color mixing. We're going to test your knowledge and see how much you actually know. How much do you actually know about how colors are formed when they're mixed? So to do this, you can just kind of sit back, relax, play along with me here. I'm going to show you some clips over here on my laptop of the parts of some of the painting classes that I teach online that you can also access as well, but more on that later. I'm going to show you some clips of some places where I start to mix colors on the palette, but I want you to guess what the color is going to be before it's finished being mixed, okay? Again, it's a game. Just have fun with it. Just have fun with it. So to start off our little game, I'm going to show you some clips of color mixing from the Rainbow Succulent class that I've taught online on my Canvas Academy platform. But I want to specifically show you some clips of the colors we mix. So here we go. So we put down already a good sized dollop of blue. Now let's see what we put on top of it. Looks like we're going to put a dollop of white. And I believe that's all we're going to put there. So before I even mix this color, this is kind of an easy one. What color do you think is going to be the result of these two colors being mixed together? I'll give you a second to think of the answer. And this is also satisfying to watch. Let's see what color it transforms into. If you guessed light blue, you would be correct. Like I said, that was kind of an easy one. But now, question 2, we're going to fast forward a little bit here. And the second color, we're going to mix together blue and yellow. So I'll give you a second or two to kind of guess as to what color you think is going to result from this. And I also want you to notice it's not equal parts yellow and blue either. It's a pretty big sized dollop of yellow and a little bit of a smaller dollop of blue. I think you know what is going to result from this. Let's see. And as I mix it up there on the palette, if you were going to guess a regular good old medium hue of green, maybe a little bit of a yellowish green, but nevertheless a green color, then you would be correct. Yay! Actually, next question is, it looks like, I didn't know I was going to do this, but I added some more blue into that green. So what do you think adding the blue into the green, this is kind of a medium tone of green, right? What do you think adding more blue is going to do to this green? You kind of got an answer. The answer is actually pretty simple. As we start to mix it here. it's actually, not only is it going to make it more of a blue-green, a little bit more leaning towards blue-green. Remember with our color wheel, you know, there's a whole wheel of colors, and colors can fall like on a spectrum on the wheel. It doesn't have to be just green, right? It can be blue-green. It can lean towards the green, the blue side of green. Because, like we already demonstrated here, what makes green is yellow and blue. So beside yellow and blue, well, inside of yellow and blue on the color wheel would be green. But green can also lean one way or the other. It can lean more towards the blue side or more towards the yellow side, and then it would create what we would call blue-green or yellow-green. Pretty simple. But even within those, remember, those are our intermediate or tertiary colors. Again, if you're not familiar with those terms, make sure you check out our color theory workshop class. But even within like blue-green, there's different variations of blue-green itself. It can be very, very green. It can be very, very blue. There's just different tones, even if they're really tiny, slight differences within that area of blue-green. So aside from that, I'm interested to see what color we're going to end up mixing next in this video. So let's see. Looks like right beside that. No, we're still on this color. So I added some white to it. Okay. And so what do you think will happen when I add white to it? Even if you don't know anything about color theory, remember what happened when we added white to this blue over here? So you can probably guess what's going to happen over here. It's going to make a very light version of that bluish green that we just made. And also, just a bit of an aside, the reason I did do that for this class is because, I'm actually going to back up here for a second. There's our regular green. Here's our blue-green. Notice how that when we added that blue, not only did it turn the color more into a blue-green tone, not only did it pull in more towards blue on the spectrum of color, right? But it made it darker. Look at how from here, this green versus this version of green, this blue-green, it turned it darker. A lot darker, actually. Because blue is inherently darker than yellow, okay? I know this is supposed to be a quiz, but I'm just giving you little hints and facts along the way because I really want you to understand these concepts, not just of color theory, or not just of color mixing, but also the color theory aspect behind it, because it's really important to understand as well. So then, of course, after that, we added some white, and just like with the blue, when we added white to blue, it just lightened it up, right? It made it lighter in tone. So now I don't know what, you can give this color any name you want because we've added a lot of stuff to it at this point. So bonus question of the quiz, what would you call this color? Leave a comment below. Whatever you want to call it. Now our next color, we are going to mix, it looks like yellow and red. And I'm going to fast forward here so you can see the ratio of yellow to red, because that does kind of make a difference too. Yellow. And then red. So you see a pretty good sized amount of yellow and kind of a smaller amount of red. Kind of like when we made that green to begin with over here. A good sized yellow, good sized amount of yellow, and a smaller amount of red. And now you get to guess, before the color gets completely mixed, what you think this color is going to turn out to be. And as we mix it, hello, it's a version of orange, right? In this video, and on this palette particularly, right now, it's looking very, very reddish to me. And so, guess what I'm going to do next? I'm going to add more yellow back into it. Yeah. Because we wanted, I believe I wanted, for this video at least, a little bit more of a medium, lighter orange. And notice again, just like when we, hello, that was kind of fun to watch in backwards, but be kind and rewind there. Just like when we added the blue up here to this green, I remember to make that blue green, it ended up making it darker also. The opposite happens when we add yellow to it, because remember, yellow it's actually the lightest of the primary colors. Remember our 3 primary colors? Color theory. Bonus question, what are the 3 primary colors? Whether you know or not, the 3 primary colors are blue, red, and yellow. And of those 3, yellow is the lightest. Alright, so yellow in some cases is going to act almost like how white, remember we added white to these 2 and it lightened them up a little bit. When we add yellow to this color, it is also inherently going to make it not just a little bit more yellow in tone, but it's also going to lighten it up a little bit. So notice how it not only gets to be a little bit more orange as we add that yellow in there, but it also lightens up the color as well. Now, I just added some white to it, and if you can guess, as we play this in real time, maybe, as we add white to it, what's going to happen to our color? It's going to get a lot lighter. That was a lot of white we added in there too. And notice how, as it's a light orange, it's a very light orange, but it's almost tannish. It's almost like a tan tone. That's really interesting to note, especially if you ever want to do like beach scenes, beach landscapes. If you need to figure out how to make the tone the color of the sand, it's going to be a really, really, really light tone of orange for you. Maybe a little bit more of a yellowish orange. I would add more yellow to that to make it the tone, the color of sand, right? But still, just a little bit of an aside there, a little bit of a hint for you. So let's move on. All right, next color is going to be red and blue. We'll see what type of ratio I put down on the palette here in a second. I have the sound muted on this video, but I was definitely telling the class something there. It's something important. But see here, we've got a half and half ratio. That's just about as half and half as it gets. Half blue, half red. 2 primary colors, blue and red. Before I even mix them, I know what I'm going to do in the video here. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to immediately put more white in it. I am. Because, well, I'll tell you why in a second. Look at that giant glob of white on there. So we've got half red, half blue, and a lot of white. And so what color do you think will result as we mix this? So you're going to see here, as I'm mixing it on the palette, the color that is resulting. It's a little bit mauve. A little bit mauve. Let's see if it changes tone as we go on. There we go. It is, at least it should be, a tone of purple, a tone of violet. It is a little bit more, I'm calling it mauve because it is a little bit more of a reddish, it's a little bit more of a red violet here. Violet or purple is one of the secondary colors on the color wheel. However, there is a reason that I added the white to it right at the start, because, and we talk about this in the color theory workshop too, but just like how I said, yellow is the lightest of the primary colors. Red and blue are both pretty dark colors. And when you mix them two together, according to color theory, you're going to get violet or purple as a secondary color. But because those 2 colors are inherently really dark by default, your purple is going to turn out really, really dark. It's going to look almost like black. So to lighten that purple up, just straight off the bat in this video, I added white to it immediately. All right. Sometimes I mix those 2 colors together first and then I add white to it so that you can see the difference before and after we add white. But here, I just added white straight away so that you could see, well, so that we could get going with class in the video. But here in this that we're talking about right now, you can see immediately that it turns into a purple tone. Not a black tone, purple tone. And we'll see if we go to add anything else to this. All right, we're adding some blue now, it looks like, to this kind of mauve color that we've got going on here. Because like I said, it was a little bit of a reddish violet, or reddish purple. And so now we're adding some blue into it. And I'll let you answer what you think is going to happen as we add some more blue to red purple, or red violet. Yes, so as you see here, the more blue we add to red violet is going to pull it back towards regular violet. Again, on the spectrum, the color wheel. Remember, we have red on one side, blue on the other, and then in the middle is purple or violet. Same thing. Two different words, same color. So when our color is pulled more towards the red side, if we want to pull it back towards the middle in between, like equally in between red and blue, we add more blue to it to pull it back to center. And then again, we are adding some white to it, even more white. So you can kind of guess what it's going to turn into. And the answer would be, of course, a very light version of purple. Very light violet. Almost like a lavender or a lilac color here, which is like my favorite color, but... So also, for this class specifically, I hope you're kind of noticing, we did a lot of colors in this class, which is why I wanted to show you clips from this video specifically. You can see that each of the colors we mixed are very, very light. They're almost like pastel, is what I want to call it, pastel. Pastel colors are just really, really light colors, right? So they're all very, very light. And how do we get our colors, or our paint colors? Anytime you're painting, you guys, all you do to lighten up a color is you add white to it. It's that simple. Making a darker color, however, it's a little bit of a different story. So moving on, we also put down just some regular dollops of just like some regular yellow here, some regular blue, and then I think this is raw umber here that we will use in this class to make our final finished product, our finished painting here. Now, however, this is where things get a little bit trickier to answer. All right, so I've got some burnt umber here, and let's see what I do with the burnt umber, and then you can guess what is going to result from using the burnt umber. Got some burnt umber there, and I'm definitely talking about something. Let's keep going. Okay, so from here, I'm scooping up that color, this like orangish, tannish almost over here that we already made. I'm putting it over here. Some good dollops of it there. And then from there, I'm taking my burnt umber. Yes, we see it's burnt umber. And I'm putting a dollop of it here. Burnt umber is not one of our three primary colors. It's completely a separate thing, separate entity. So what do you think, my fellow artists, what will happen when we add burnt umber to this orange, this really light orange tone that we already made? You can answer as we start mixing it here. You may have no clue what's going to happen, unless perhaps you have studied color theory or taken color theory classes with me. So as we mix in, let's speed it up a little bit here, this burnt umber, it is changing not only the color of, remember this was our base color that we were working with here, and we added burnt umber to it over here. It's not only changing the tone, the color of it physically, but it's also making it darker. That was the main goal of why we add, at least in this case, why we added burnt umber to it, to make it darker. Because remember I said adding white makes things lighter. Well, adding a darker color, like burnt umber, is one way to make things darker. There are a couple of different ways to make colors darker, but using burnt umber is one of them. So in this case, we did add burnt umber. And because burnt umber in itself, you guys, is like a really, really dark reddish brown. It's a brown color, essentially. but it does have like red undertones to it. So it also changed like the color, not just making it darker, right? This orange over here, but it also kind of made it a little bit more reddish, especially in those undertones, a little bit more of that red undertone. So that's it for that one. Let's see if I can find some other clips here. So here is another class that I've got over on Canvas Academy. This is a watercolor class, completely different from doing acrylic. Well, not completely different, but in all of the watercolor classes I actually teach on Canvas Academy, we make our own watercolors and we make them out of acrylic paints. This changes the nature of the acrylic paint though, as you're going to see in a second, if you're not already aware. Get ready to quiz yourself now on, we're adding a little bit of an extra layer of complexity to this. So here I've got my watercolor palette already and rearing to go. I've got 6 little dollops in my palette here, and they're all full of water. Important to note, they're all full of water. And I'm going to turn each one of these into a different color. And you get to guess how I'm going to go about doing it. So, for our first color, what I'm going to do is I'm taking this blue tube of paint here. I'm just getting a little bit out of the cap so I can get it on my mixing tool. And now, I'm pausing so you can guess what is going to happen to this blue as I mix it in with this plain, clear water here. I'll give you a second to answer. As I'm mixing it, you're going to see that the blue is actually not going to be the watercolor version of this blue. Remember, this is just an acrylic paint tube that we had. Probably the same tube we just used in that last video. But as I add this color to the water, it's actually making a different tone of color because the addition of the water, you guys, adding white paint to acrylics is one way to make the color lighter. Another way to make things lighter is by adding water, because water is a translucent substance. It's a translucent medium, if you will. And adding that translucent effect to your paint is actually going to make it appear lighter on the page and on the palette, just like what we've got here. So as I added that blue, see, this is not the same blue that was in the tube. This is actually a lighter, it's still the same tone of blue, whatever type of blue it was, cerulean blue, just regular primary blue hue, whatever it was called. It's the same hue of blue, but it's lighter in tone because of the water. So let's go on ahead and see what the next color is going to be. I'm doing the same thing now. I'm taking yellow, and again, I think I'm going to do the same thing here, yes. We're adding it to the water in the palette. So of course by now you should be able to know, not just guess, but you should know that as we add that yellow to our palette here, it's actually going to create a lighter version of yellow than the version that would be in this tube, because remember, adding water to your acrylic paints is going to make it appear lighter. So it looks like our next color, we might repeat the same process with, is going to be red. So again, if you can guess what's going to happen as we add red to the water in our palette over here, it's just going to make a lighter version of red compared to what was in our tube here. Just like that. It looks like this red is actually, it's almost the same color. It's probably still a little bit lighter. Kind of hard to tell in a video, right? In real life, we can definitely tell probably that it would be lighter than what's in the tube. But it is still like a pretty kind of dark, bright red tone. And that is probably because I added quite a lot of red paint over here, versus in this blue and yellow, I probably had less of the actual acrylic paint on the end of my mixing tool. A smaller amount to a greater ratio of water is going to make it, you know, even lighter. the more water you add, the lighter it's going to be. But in this case, in the red, I had more on the end of the mixing tool, and I did do that intentionally in this class. I had more paint on that mixing tool, so it's a higher ratio of paint to water. Not as much water in there compared to as much paint as we now have in this little cup here. Now I want you to pay attention here as to what I do next. We already kind of saw a preview of it, but here, I didn't wipe my mixing tool off, but I had this much paint left on the end of it. Just a little like minuscule amount of paint there. And what's going to happen as I touch that, that's actually really cool. Let's watch that again, like almost slow motion here. As I add that to, boom, this down here, I'm just lightly tapping it in there. I'm just barely getting it. And then from there, I'm wiping my tool off. And then you're going to notice immediately that this color that it's starting to create without even mixing it is inherently lighter than this red up here, right? Because there's a higher ratio of water here to paint. It's just barely not a lot of paint, and it's quite a bit of water. So that's what's making it lighter. However, what I'm also going to do is take some white. Oh yeah, peel the little cap thing off. That's always fun. We're going to do the same thing with this white. And we're going to take a good sized dollop of it there. And we're going to put it in there. And now's your chance. Another, one of your quiz questions as to what's going to happen as we add this white to this watercolor here. So as we add the white, you gotta really swirl it up in there. Sometimes it doesn't want to come off the mixing tool. I'm telling this to myself. You mix it. There you go, girl. Scrape it on the side and mix it in there. And now you're going to see it really change color into this pink tone. This is how you make pink, especially watercolor pink. Because when we're making our own watercolor out of acrylics, sometimes just adding water to the red, just really trying to line it up with the water isn't enough. So sometimes you got to add some extra white in there to, again, we already know white acrylic paint lightens it up, lightens everything up. So we added that in here in the water and the white paint, 2 ways to make acrylic paint lighter. We added those both in here and we made a really nice light pink watercolor tone. So next, it looks like we're going to add, I think, 2 colors to this one. We're going to start off with yellow. So it's going to be just like this one to start. We don't need to quiz you on that because you could see that that was going to be the same. However, we are going to add a second color to it. And the second color is going to be that same blue, but just a very small amount on the tip of the mixing tool. Now, as we add that to this yellow, can you guess? Anybody? What's going to happen? I'll even speed it up for you a little bit. There we go. So very small amount of blue. It's getting this really you saw how much yellow we put in there, right? And the very just tiny minuscule amount of blue on the end is making this more of a yellow green. It is a green. If you guessed that it was going to make green, you would be correct. Now from there, I believe I actually added some more blue in there to make it a little bit more of the right down the road green, because I think I was going for green there, not a yellowish green, but again, the first time we mixed it, it did turn out a little bit more yellow green. So then we mixed it up to make it green. So from there, what I'm actually going to do is, now I'm not using the mixing tool at all. See, from there, I'm actually using my paintbrush over here in the water cup. I'm getting it really wet, dabbing it just so it's not soaking. But I'm going to dip my brush in this green color we just made. And then I'll even tell you as we're doing this so that you can guess what's gonna happen next. I'm gonna dip it and mix it in this plain white over here. And thus far you should be able to guess, at least sort of. You should be able to guess what's going to happen. So we touch it to the water there and put it just like that. So, if you guessed, it's just going to make a lighter version of that green. You would be correct. Interestingly, it looks a little bit more yellowish green than this one does, but it's just a lighter version of green because, remember, a greater amount of water. We just barely had any paint on the brush when we dipped it in here. Like, barely any at all. So it's a really nice, translucent, and very light tone of green there. So let's go on ahead and see if I can find one more video to show you here for our quiz. Alright, so this last video that we're going to look at is actually a little bit different. This is a clip from the full color theory class that I offer over on Canvas Academy. It's more in depth than the free workshop, which I also offered and I very highly recommend you guys all check out. But in this section of the class, we actually go over complementary colors within color theory. And if you've already taken this class, you'll know what's going to happen with those complementary colors. However, I want to show you here what happens when we mix two complementary colors together. We're going to pause it right there. Complementary colors, you guys, essentially they're just opposites. They're just colors that sit on opposite ends of the color wheel. There's also a thing called split complementary colors, which would be like a Y shape on the color wheel, but that's a little bit more advanced. And in this method that I'm showing you in this class and that I'm talking to you about now, we're just concerned with regular complementary colors that sit completely opposite on opposite ends of the color wheel. And I've even got a color wheel here for you to look at. So here I've got red and green. Those are my two complementary colors. I've got green and red. They're sitting, we can see here, green, red. They're completely on opposite ends of the color wheel. Now, I've got these two colors, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix them together here in this shaded color area. In not equal amounts. I know, I just realized you can probably read on the worksheet here that we were using that when they mix together, they will cancel out and create a dark gray. However, that's not what we're doing in this exercise. So if you think you were getting smart by reading that and trying to get ahead of me and answer the quiz question before I even ask it, you're wrong. You're not going to be completely correct. So what we're going to do is we're actually not going to mix them. It is true that if we mix these colors in equal amounts, according to color theory, they should completely cancel out and create a really dark gray, almost black tone. However, that's not what we're doing here, specifically in this exercise that I'm going to show you here. Instead, we're going to start with red. We're going to fill the color completely in with red. And then from there, we're going to add tiny, tiny amounts of green, mixing it into the red. So now's your chance to guess what you think will happen as we add small amounts of green into that base red. Small amounts at a time. Of course, I'll add more as we go. And you can see as I mix up this whole bubble here that it's actually making a darker shade, a darker version of our original red. It's not making gray or black because we didn't add things in half and half ratios. We added just a little bit of green to that original red. And, answer to your quiz question, it created a dark red, almost like a burgundy there. So that is all for today's little color theory mixing quiz, whatever you want to call it. And like I said multiple times in today's video, I highly, highly recommend, if you guys haven't already, check out my Canvas Academy online learning platform. That's actually where I took all of these clips today from, is from all of the many, many classes that I teach over there. And on Canvas Academy, you can learn how to make not just some snapshots of the pictures and the, workshop classes that you saw here today, but also we do a lot of like still life, like fruit paintings. We do flower paintings in both acrylic and watercolor paint. We even do things like Disney-inspired portraits, inspired by all our favorite childhood movies, and so much more. So again, highly recommend that you check out Canvas Academy. Also be sure to check out the free color theory workshop here on YouTube if you haven't already. And I hope to see and hopefully paint with you guys all again very soon.